Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We will start the webinar at 11 a.m. Please be there. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. I can't hear you, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sir. Sir, at 11:02, I requested Belsara sir to speak just to introduce you,
Sure.
and he will speak for 2 minutes, and then you can start the presentation.
Yes. I shall share the screen within a fraction of a second once the official announcement is made.
Yeah, you just you can start sharing the first screen only.
Surely. Thank you. Now, can you see the title slide?
Yeah.
Is it all right?
Yeah, it's all right.
And images are also well visible?
Yes.
Great.
The two blue lines mark on the screen.
Yes. That actually I have tasted my pencil.
No.
Because I shall be using my pencil during my presentation.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Now I have erased all the lines.
Yeah.
All the stray lines I have erased.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is how I shall be scrolling my screens.
Yeah.
Great.
So the voice is somewhat a little slow. It's a low. Your voice is little low.
Is it all right?
That's fine.
That's fine?
Yes, sir.
Great.
Sir, one mail you might have received one email from Gosikhurd engineer. Have you received that?
Yes, I have. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I have received it. Actually, I have read most of the contents that he has sent.
Okay, sir.
I have read most of the contents that he has sent to me.
Right.
Now, again, I shall read it once. And
Yes,
there are some doubts in my mind, so I shall telephonically speak to him. And thereafter, we shall align the solution.
Right. I also request him to share the drawing. Have you got the drawing?
Yes, he has sent me one drawing.
Okay.
And in case there is any question, I shall speak to him, and we shall be in touch with him.
आपको उनकी आवाज ठीक आ रही है? मुझे थोड़ा सा ब्रेक मतलब ये आ रहा है उनकी आवाज से। वेरी क्लियर ना? वीडियो कोई एस्पेक्ट नहीं है इम्पोर्टेंट, उनकी वॉइस आपको क्लियर आ रही है? ओके मेरा प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है क्योंकि यहाँ थोड़ा सा नेटवर्क का भी मेरा इश्यू दिख रहा है। दैट मे बी द केस, क्योंकि वो थोड़ा सा उनका वॉइस ना इतना क्लियर नहीं आ रहा है मुझे।
Bill sir, is the voice problem क्या?
Sir, pardon me, sir.
Any issue in the voice transmission?
No, it's okay. Actually, at my end there is a certain issue of network connectivity, so that may be the case. So just I got confirmed with Kamal.
If you have the hands free, do you have the hands free? Then use that.
Yes, yes, sir.
If you use the hands free, then you know the voice clarity will be better.
Yes.
Good morning, Bilsare sir. You are unmuted now. Bilsare sir, please unmute from your end.
Yeah, unmuted. Am I audible now?
Yes,
Yes,
Bill
sir,
sir,
you are audible.
we are listening to you.
Yes. So, good morning to everyone. I welcome Engineer Vivek Bhai Kapadia, Secretary, Water Resource Department, Government of Gujarat. As you are aware, he is a person of design, implementation, policy. Today, he is going to talk about the application of geosynthesis in hydrolytic structures. The area which he has not only designed, but he has implemented on canals where the restoration has been done, as well as in the construction. And also he will sharing the very good case studies where from the design perspective to the implementation and the post implementation performance. He is a master of engineering, master of law, then master of management, and he is a pioneer in water conservation movement in Gujarat. So we are happy to receive him as a speaker, and you will really enjoy this webinar. There is a lot of questions I expect from your end, so that he can answer those questions, and we learn from the experience of Gujarat to implement in Maharashtra. So I request, and first I thank you, Vivek Bhai, for sparing your time, and I request you to start your webinar. Thank you very much.
So nice of you. Welcome to everybody. And now we are officially commencing the study of the application of geosynthetics in the field of hydraulic structures. I hope I am audible to everyone.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, great. So today we are going to discuss 3 case studies, out of which the first one is the restoration of breach section of the Narmada main canal. As you know, Narmada project is a very big one, that is called Sardar Sarovar project. Here is the location of the dam, and this is the red thick line what you see across the state is the main canal or the alignment of the main canal, and what the yellow portion you see on the left side of that red line is the entire command area of the Sardar Sarovar project. The total length of the canal is 458 km within the reach of Gujarat, and thereafter it goes into the Rajasthan for 75 kilometers more. This yellow portion is 1.8 million hectare of the area, so it is too big an area. And today the case study that we are discussing is somewhat to 70 kilometers of the chainage of the Narmada main canal, which is located somewhere here. So if you see the characteristics and the salient features, 1133 cubic meter per second discharge is the main point. That is the off-taking point of the Narmada main canal, which is too big. 1133 cubic meter per second means it is bigger than even a river. Is the canal that I have shown you, which is the real one. There the design discharge is 584 cubic meter per second. Again, it is as good as a river at least. So soon after the construction was over in the month of June 2005, and it was put to the testing mode. In the testing mode itself, these locations started manifesting the signs of distress. So this is a brief history as to how distress events were recorded. But in the month of June 2006, especially the end of the June 2006, there was a huge breach, and that breach actually alarmed all of us. What you can see here is a big piping in the right bank of the canal. Big piping, what you can see here. This 1.5 meter in the diameter, just imagine. 9 meter is the total height of the embankment, and 1.5 meter was the size of the piping. And you can see here in these two photographs the distress that this canal caused to the surrounding villages. They were all inundated very badly. This is the photograph of the eastern section of the canal, a far-off photograph. The section was actually just as you know, we cut the back of the ice cream. How does it look? That is how the canal was looking. And here this photograph shows you somewhat, you know, the signs of distress. This is what you see is a continuous shear failure line, and here are the structure failures. This is structure. Okay, so why should it happen? Let us discuss this. When we constructed the canal, the section was looking like this, and thereafter it subsided because of its own weight. The unconstructed section of because of the subsidence of the embankment on the bottom one, it was a thick formation over here, and because of the thick formation over here, you see here in the photograph is the continuous line of shear between the concrete line. This incomplete line, the shear resistance is too low. That's why possible. But you see here is the vertical rupture in the concrete line. Why it happened? Because some portion subsided and some portion did not go that much of. So it is not differential subsidence and this kind of vertical crack. The size of this crack was so big, the subsidence was also so large. The person would in from go. This was the failure see here in this photograph. Now I am taking you to very close to the breach section or the chisel section. Here,
Dear Kapadia, sir.
Entire chisel.
Sir, sorry for interruption. Your voice is breaking, sir. Could you please close your webcam? So I think the voice can be clear.
Yeah. Surely. If I off my video, will it be all right?
Yes, your screen will be visible.
Yeah. Now am I audible?
Now it's better, sir.
It is better. Okay. So what you see here, you know, is a very close view of the chiseled section of the main canal. It is 9 meters tall. You can see visibly 3 flaws in the construction. Flaw number 1 is that you see the stratified section of the entire embankment. Some portion is dark and some portion is light. The thin dark portion represents actually a compacted layer, and the light thick layer represents uncompacted or semi-compacted portion. So normally we have to construct any kind of a canal embankment in a very systematic manner. We prefer to spread only 23 centimeter thick soil layer uncompacted, then we water it and then we roll it down to be compacted. And that is how we go layer by layer. Instead thereof here, there were thick soil layers spread 1.25 to 1.5 meter thick, and then they were tried to be watered and rolled, and that's why some portion what you can see is the thin line of compacted portion, and the thick line beneath it is the uncompacted or semi-compacted kind of a portion like this. So that is flaw number one. Flaw number two, actually in big embankment like these, we have to design like an earthen dam. So there would be an impervious core, there would be chimney filter, there will be horizontal filter, every kind of, pore pressure releasing mechanism must be there inside. But here it was nowhere. That is flaw number two. And flaw number three, what you can see here, is a piping. This piping occurred before the failure, and you can see it's a through piping. And the size of the pipe is also too big. So these are the three failures that were noticeable when we inspected the site soon after the breach occurred. So the design section, if you see, is having all the features that I narrated before. Impervious core is also there, then chimney filter is also there, horizontal filter is also there, all kinds of pore pressure releasing mechanisms are there, so that phreatic line could be within the base width of the canal section. But actually it was not constructed like. Now, I'm not taking you to the dismal part of the inquiry. Only technical aspects are being focused over here, because our objective is to learn as to how the thing should be better. Now, the question was of analysis of the as-built section, whether it is technically possible to be made feasible to stand for a long. That was the main question. So the slip circle modeling that normally we the engineers use for the embankment stability was not applicable here. Why? Because the fundamental assumption in the slip circle method is that the section should be either homogeneous or it should be properly zoned, so that accordingly the properties can be attributed in the slip circle modeling. But here, because it was stratified and that too irregularly stratified, as-built section could not be properly modeled with the slip circle model. So there was issue number one. But one thing was very clear, that it was actually a steady state seepage problem, and that's why we modeled it like this. In the finite element analysis, the K1 represents properly densed or compacted layer, and K2 represents poorly compacted soil layer. And that is how we came to conclusion that actually speaking, phreatic line could not be limited within the base width of the embankment, and they were passing through. And because they were passing through, the piping used to take place so frequently. That was our conclusion in brief. Now I am coming to the issues, that what were the actual issues in the restoration of this canal section. As such, this is the main canal of the Sardar Sarovar project, and so many villages and towns are dependent on it. So domestic water supply is concerned. So in order to provide the domestic water supply, the main canal directly supplies to the big sumps of the town level or a cluster level at the villages, and only 10 days of standby buffer stock is available for all these towns and villages. So within 10 days, we must refunctionalize the canal. That was a big challenge before us, too short a time. Rainfall had already occurred because it was the June end. So all the borough areas were containing so much of water that we could not properly bring the soil of the right quality to restore the canal section. So whatever soil was available was predominantly sand with some small quantity of clay inside. So the soil quality that was available was extremely poor. So the zonation and the filtered material and everything could not be provided because of this non-availability of the appropriate material. Another issue that the length of the restoration was too small. The breach was 35 meter, so maximum you can cut both the sides, say 15 or 20 meter, and you can have hardly 70 to 50 meter long a canal embankment to be restored. Now rolling has also some kind of limitation of the length. If you have 1 kilometer of section, you can easily roll it properly, but 80 meter, how can you roll And for that, you can't demolish 1 kilometer long canal section. Obviously, you can understand this. So again, this was a limitation with us. Then, you know, bond with the original construction. Restoration portion was required to be properly bonded with the original constructed canal section on both the sides. That was again a challenge how to design this, because it is not a bookish exercise. Over and above all these issues, these are all the technical issues. But over and above all, the people's wrath, because obviously the ladies were completely submerged, their wrath was also required to be, you know, properly handled by us. Then political intervention, as you know, India is a democratic country. We can't live without political intervention. And what kind of political intervention in these days, you know, become super incumbent to the activity is also known to you. Then the movement of the media. All this, you know, was adding fuel to the fire, and in that situation, we had to restore the section. At that point of time, actually, I was head of the design office, and but anyway, I was the one to restore the section as well, according to the directions of the government. So the challenge was big. In the design office, there were so many cadres, executive engineers, deputy engineer, junior engineers, and all. But you know, none was there to rise to the occasion and take up the challenge. So individually, that came to my shoulder. I thought, you know, application of geosynthetic should be done in this kind of situation. That was my first experience. I was not knowing it is going to be a seminal work for my life. But anyway, in the first experience, I simply had to depend on the books that I had. There was no IS code that was shedding any light on this kind of solution. So I depended on the books only. I made the analysis. I contacted all the geosynthetic manufacturer, had a warehouse in Ahmedabad, 70 kilometers away from this site. And he gave me the material property. It was very cheap on the site. And this material, I saw the property I have listed over here on the screen. As such, this material was not truly speaking ideal for this kind of solution. But still it was acceptable because of two crucial properties. One property here, what you see is the elongation, just 15% elongation. It was non-woven polypropylene. 15% elongation at the highest tensile strength, you know, that is a very good kind of a material that way. Means my restored portion will not undergo too much of deformations. Will be assured by this property was my consideration at that point of time. Number two, the flow rate. You see here it is 260 liters per minute per meter square is the flow rate. And these two properties were actually very much enticing to me, and that's why I said yes, if this material is readily available to me, I will take it instantaneously. But that was ready for dispatch on the order of some other client. So I had to approach the client. I requested the client that this is the public interest work and it is an emergency work. He could wait for another 15 days so that another lot of material could be produced by the manufacturer and he would supply him the next lot. He was kind enough to cooperate me, and accordingly I lifted the material same night. The manufacturer was also kind enough to provide me the stitching expertise. Stitching experts came to the site with the machine and polyester yarn fibers so that they could properly stitch the 6-meter long rolls and make a continuous sheet. So this was my design section. I should come to the design philosophy subsequently. Once I understood how it was looking, it is called wraparound mechanism. So all the geosynthetic sheets were wrapped layer by layer, and accordingly the stack was prepared. But basically my philosophy was that entire embankment was not geo-reinforced, only a part of it was geo-reinforced, and that was only the outer side. This outer side will be acting as a retaining wall. Like, you know, this portion will be acting as a retaining wall, and the water side, you know, that will be simply resting on this. So this is how this design philosophy works, and accordingly I designed the section. Now I'm taking you to the design philosophy as to how the reinforced earth actually works. You know, I'm taking you to the fundamentals because you are all the engineers and you can appreciate how the reinforced earth works, and that principle will be holding good in all the cases of the reinforced earth, whether it is a hydraulic application, or it's a road application, or it's another application. So, this is the bridge section. Actually, this was the bridge section in the mid of the slide, what you see here. And this is the view that you are viewing from here. That is the outside canal, outer side of the canal, not the water side of the canal. This is the water side, and this is the outer side. Okay, so viewing from this outer side, the bridge was viewed like this. So what we do, we cut the canal embankment on both the sides in the steps. The size of the step was exactly as per the location of the geosynthetic sheet we wanted to spread. So every trade of the step will be bearing one geosynthetic layer. That is how on both the sides we designed the entire bonding of the new construction with the old construction. And this was entirely designed by me single-handedly, because no engineer in my office was ready to take up this design, accept this design, saying that the government IS code, there is no schedule of rate, how can we sign the document? So on the design drawing, design carried by me, it was signed. Design, it was signed by me. Design accepted from construction point of view, it was also signed by me as the construction wing or the execution wing. So this kind of risk teaches you a lot, gives you, a courage that will be an asset to you the lifetime. So this is how the bonding issue was resolved, and the design philosophy now I'm taking you to actually. Let us remember the initial days of the 20th century, when these kind of ladder walls were constructed. Even prior to that, so many ladder walls have been constructed in India and China, but they were not officially put before the scientific community or the engineering community in technically convincing a proposition. It was always put forth intuitively. And India is a country of, as you know, India is not a country of logics or scientific narration, and that's why intuition is developed in every Indian mind. But these kind of wall, that was nicely constructed and narrated as to how it behaves by Andre Cohen, a French engineer. This is his ladder wall. This is also his ladder wall. He constructed them in 1926 and he got patent in 1929 on this. How he narrated scientifically, let us go as per his version. I'm simply, reiterating what he has written. His writings are paraphrased in a very prominent book, Earth Reinforcement and Soil Structures, as you see him it is published by the ASC Journal, and it is a very good book. If you encounter this book, please keep it in your personal library as well. That is what my recommendation. So here, he gave an analogy of a Howe beam. We all use the Howe beam, for the medium span bridges and medium span trusses as well. So this Howe beam is attributed actually to an American architect, William Howe, who worked on this beam in the first half of the 19th century. So this Howe beam, he has taken as an analogy, Andre Cohen has taken as an analogy. If you see this Howe beam, it has this bottom flange. This is the bottom flange. It is actually a tension member. This is the top flange. It is actually a compression member. All these vertical ties, they are again tension member, and all these diagonals, they are the compression members in the Howe structure. If it is subjected to a symmetrical load, these reaction moments will also be symmetrical. Obviously it is, and the deflected shape in general will be looking like this. Now, instead of subjecting it to a uniformly distributed load, you can subject it to a uniformly tapered load as well. Obviously, only the behavior will be changed of all the members. How they change, that we are discussing. But let us first understand this thing. If you stretch the height of the beam and make it tall, keep the span as it is, but simply raise the height, then what will happen? All your compression members will be reducing their contribution. So the forces inside the diagonal members will be reduced. Once the diagonal members contribution is reduced, at some point you can even wish to remove them, and still the structure will be stable, and that will be called Virendini girder. So you see Virendini girder like this, is it? And we have designed and constructed so many Virendini girders in our life. There is no point in it. So just I'm recollecting you as to how you visualize these kind of structures. Now let us consider a Hove beam subjected to a tapering load like this. In the tapering load, you know, the behavior will change only on one aspect. The compression and tension will remain as it is. So the bottom flange will be in tension, compression will be there in the top flange. The vertical ties will also be tension members, and the diagonals will be the compression. But as you see on the right side, that is the increasing load, and the moment will be much greater. Reactive moment will be much greater. One more change will also be there from structural analysis point of view. As you travel in the direction of increase in the load, you will see that contribution of element or the forces in the element are also increasing in magnitude. The nature will be the same, compression or tension, but the diagonals will be carrying more and more compression as you travel towards the increase in the load direction. And that is how the behavior is changing. Let us now understand how we use the analogy of the Hove beam in our retaining wall kind of a mechanism. Very interesting thing. This is the typical retaining wall that we construct. And how the deflected shape is, what I have shown in the magenta form is the deflected shape. Okay, the red or pink kind of shape that you see. The tension in this is on the inner side, that is the backfill side. Okay, and the compression will be on the outer side. If you rotate this Hove beam by 90 degree anti-clockwise, you will see the Hove beam looking like this. We are taking only a part of the Hove beam, not the entire Hove beam, but that will be like this. This inner flange will be taking the tension as we have seen in the cantilever wall. So this will be the bottom flange. Okay, and this outer side will be taking the compression. So this will be the top flange. Okay, the ties are now becoming horizontal because we have rotated it 90 degree, and the diagonals are still taking compression as we have understood. Now in the soil, as you go to the bottom, the self weight is increasing. As you go to the bottom, the weight of the soil will be increasing, obviously, and the same will be the phenomenon in the lateral thrust. As you go to the bottom, the lateral thrust will also be increased, and that is linear increase. So with this understanding, how the wall should behave, this is the geo-reinforced earth wall, a typical section. All this is, banking on this portion, the red outline box. This red outline box, or now I am making it blue. This is the geo-reinforced earth wall. These are all the geo-reinforcements. Okay, these are all the reinforcements. Now, how does it behave? This is the compression. This entire is the compression zone. Okay, you got it. As it is here in this case, this portion is the tension, but here the weight of the soil is increasing as you go down, and the weight is so much of the soil that it counters the tension requirement of the bottom flange of the Hove beam. So you are not providing any tension over here vertically, because the soil weight itself is sufficient to take care of. Now this is the compression zone. In the compression zone, the compression is significant, and that's why the soil gets ruptured at times. In order to avoid the rupture, how do we take care? We provide the outer cladding like this. Okay, these are the outer claddings, and they are properly tied with these reinforcements. So this portion, the compression zone, is actually a confined zone. And you know that once the soil is confined and the particles are not allowed to migrate outside, the soil in confined position is extra strong, and that is how it can tackle the problem of rupture of the soil. So this is how this outer side, that is called the fascia or the outer wall, is actually not for decency or the aestheticity. It is for confinement of the soil so that the compression zone, howsoever small it does not show any kind of sign of distress under rupture of the soil. So that is how this entire mass, behaves. Now, what about these ties? Horizontal ties. They are your reinforcements. These are your reinforcements. And they are the ties because the soil cannot take so much of compression. Now, where have gone these diagonals? Where have gone these diagonals? Actually, this diagonal, because you have a Hove beam with extraordinary height. Your Hove beam is not a slender beam like this. It is too heavy a beam. So the height as compared to the span is so much that the contribution of the diagonal becomes minimal. Only little compression force is now required, and this much of soil is all capable of taking this small compression. And that's why you don't provide any diagonals. But what is not actually taken care of by the soil is this horizontal tension, and that's why you provide the geo reinforcement or the steel reinforcement in some cases. And that is how this entire mass behaves as a monolith. We call it pseudo monolith. It is not monolith from all the engineering dimensions point of view or considerations point of view, but we call it pseudo monolith. Okay, so now this is all about how the geo reinforced earthen embankment works, and this is the analogy as narrated by Andre Cohen himself. I have elucidated it further with certain more examples and more drawings like this. Now let us come to my section. Here what you see is, in the bottom, the spacing of the reinforcement is very low. As I go towards top, the spacing between the layer increases. Why it happens so? The reason being, if you see here, the ties, as I told you, as you go in the bottom, the force is more, and that's why the tension should also be more. Now, I cannot increase the stiffness of the geosynthetic material. Had it been a case of steel structure, it would be all right. But here it can't be. So instead of providing thicker material at the bottom and keeping the spacing as it is, I have reduced the spacing, keeping the geosynthetic material as it is, and that is how the variation of this strength has been taken care of. Because you are engineers, you can understand it all very easily. That reduce the spacing instead of increasing the thickness of the element, and that is how it is. Now you see here the embedded length at the bottom is more than what the embedded length in the top is. Why it is so? Let us remember the contribution of Henry Vidal. Henry Vidal, again a French engineer who worked in the second half of the 18th century. Because Andre Cohen has constructed so many retaining wall like this, ladder walls, Henry Vidal extended. He proved as to how the reinforcements that you provide take tension. How do they take tension? Because they are all very flexible material. How do they take tension? He narrated that actually the friction mechanism develops the friction into this geo-reinforced sheet or a steel wire or a cable. When it is embedded into the soil, it is subjected to pressure from both the sides. Okay? Because of the pressure, the friction coefficient between the soil particle and your synthetic material comes into action, and when the lateral thrust is applied to it, this material comes under tension. So Henry Vidal's contribution is immense into this field. I have borrowed this figure from his original paper that he got published in 1863. This is the same figure I have copied over here and shown to you. So that is how the theory has been working very well, and accordingly we have to design it. So now, this is the design philosophy of my reinforced earth wall over here. I have got all the calculations manually done that I can share, but here the time is too short. I'm not actually narrating step by step, but this is how it works so well These are the sweet memories of our working day and night on the site. These are the stitching experts with handy machine, and they are joining one sheet with another. I got the rolls of 6 meters each. Now this is the completed section. Only thing you know that I did this reinforced concrete lining. This much portion was the reinforced concrete lining and not the plain concrete lining. And on the outer side, we have sown some seeds of some vegetation, so that self-stabilization of the earth will also take place on the outer side, and the geosynthetic material is also duly covered. Now there will be a fundamental question that if there is no chimney drain, how the pore pressure will be controlled into this section? That is required to be answered by me prior to you ask me. In this case, as the material is sandy with only little amount of clay, the material is too porous. Truly speaking, the material is too porous. I showed you the second property of the geosynthetic material, that is 260 liters per meter square per minute. That is the filtration rate. So whatever pore pressure that is mounting in my embankment is actually released through the apertures of the geosynthetic sheet. 260 liters per minute per meter square is too good a rate. So the pore pressure, as soon as it's developed, is allowed to be released, and had to without allowing any kind of particle migration because the apertures were too small. So this is how the pore pressure is duly taken care of, and the entire section behaves very nicely. Now, because it is the wraparound mechanism, I don't have provided any kind of outer fascia because it's already compression zone. So there is no need of providing any kind of outer fascia in this kind of wraparound mechanism. So these were the two fundamental things to be noted. Now I'm taking you to the case study number 2. It is actually addressing the seepage and stability challenges in the canals with the sandy soil. Here, I am taking you to the case study of a new construction of the canal, fresh construction of the canal. That was the restoration earlier I discussed. Now I am taking you to the fresh construction of the canal. Here in the Sardar Sarovar's command area, this last portion of the Gujarat reach, that is very close to the desert of the Kutch, as you can see. And that is actually, the commencement of the small desert of Kutch. So all the soil is sandy. It is all sand, and that too SM kind of. So very fine sand, you can't compact it. And last 4 canals are there to be constructed in this region. If I try to borrow some good soil, that will be some 200 kilometer of lead, and 200 kilometer lead means transportation cost was coming to the tune of 1800 rupees per cubic meter. Just imagine, 1800 rupees per cubic meter. Instead thereof, I can construct entire canal of the concrete solid monolith. That will be cheaper. You can understand this. So, there was no conventional technology to come to my work. Here you can see all the sandy soils are there. But anyway, there was no option. So I thought, here also geosynthetic will come to my help. The main issue here was another, compactability was nowhere. SM soil, all the particles are fine sand, uniform size, so you can't compact them. If there is variable size of the particle, then only can you compact it. So compactability was an issue. Permeability was another issue, because so many voids were there in the SM kind of soil. The permeability was so high that the phreatic line was not actually parabolic like this yellow one. It was like this green line, as good as flat, And in order to keep this line within the bed width of the canal, I required a 2 big canal embankment. Again cost. So instead thereof, we thought, we should go for a geo-reinforced section. Another was also issue with the SM soil that I'm taking you to. That was, spreading kind of failure. If the SM soil is there, the pore pressure variation because of the water level variation. Water level will be having different heights. In the daytime, we shall increase the discharge. In the night time, we shall reduce the discharge. So because of the variation in the water levels, the pore pressure will also vary inside the embankment. And that pore pressure variation can also lead to a spread kind of failure if the canal is made up of SM kind of a soil. So how to address all these issues? How to grip this soil? So again, the georeinforced southern section was thought of. Some people were recommending, the CNS soil layer like this. But how to compact this layer in so short a bit? And again, the CNS material was required to be brought from 200-kilometer lead. So, instead of going for conventional solution, I recommended we should go for this kind of, reinforced earthen embankment. So these are the geogrids that we preferred instead of polypropylene. Here are the geogrids that we have preferred. This one is the geosynthetic clay liner beneath the lining, and on the geosynthetic clay liner we have used 0.5 mm HDPE sheet, and above it we have provided the concrete lining. So this is how conceptually it was. Geosynthetic clay liner, what it is, I'm just giving you a glimpse of. Actually, geosynthetic clay liner is a sandwich material. There are two sheets, they are permeable sheets. And here what is filled is the bentonite clay. It is pure bentonite. So as soon as the material comes into the contact with the water, the porous covering of it will allow the water to go inside. And as soon as the bentonite comes into the contact of the water, it swells. And because it swells, it becomes impermeable. It becomes impermeable. Its volume increases. All the voids are filled. And that is how it becomes an impervious layer. And so many applications of geosynthetic clay liner is done in the mining application. So these are the properties of the geogrid that we have used as reinforcement. You can see here the tensile strength over here is reasonably good. 16 kilonewton per meter means the geogrid is very good. Albeit it was not a biaxial geogrid. It was a uniaxial geogrid, and that's why in the cross direction you see here, it is only 20 kilonewton per meter the strength. So it is a uniaxial geogrid that we have preferred because our application is uniaxial. Only the transfer direction of the canal will require tension, not the longitudinal will require much tension, and that's why it is this kind of property. Now the lining was difficult because here the tender condition provided for mechanical lining. Now the mechanical lining has a blader, so that when the lining machine moves, the blader will first correct the profile of the subgrade and the concreting will be applied on it. But here, if the blade is allowed, then my geosynthetic sheet will be cut. So we had to do some mechanical engineering on the site itself. So we removed the blade of the machine. One machine was kept with the blade and the other machine was kept without blade. So one machine was allowed to move with the blade so that subgrade was prepared. Then that machine was taken forward, and that was followed by the machine without blade. Now the machine without blade, instead of taking a complete trapezium section to be lined, it took into pieces. This is the first piece that we did. One track was put over here, other track was put over here, and this much of the portion was lined. Then we took forward this machine in the next reach, say 100 meter, and then we reversed this machine and put the machine to be like this, so that first 100 meter was lining up to this and the 100 meter was this. So the bottom construction joint was staggered. I think you got what I wanted to communicate. So this is the first stage and this is the last stage. In the second stage, on the first half when the lining was done, the second stage or second part of the lining was done like this. And that is how in the staggered fashion we constructed the bottom joint in order to avoid differential settlement induced shear failure in the bottom of the lining. So this is how the construction was done. This is the geosynthetic clay liner, and this is the machine working in only half of the trapezium that you can see here in this photograph. Okay, so now the canal that was made was looking like this. One very good experience that we encountered after construction of the canal. This construction was done by me in 2013. In in 2015, there was, you know, an extraordinary kind of a monsoon, though it was an area nearing to the desert. Night long, it was high intensity rainfall. The canal got submerged for a day. And then the water was released. Because it is stable and the drainage is also very poor, so it took some long time to drain off. But still, you know, in one day, the water receded and the canal was open. We inspected, it was absolutely fine. You know, canals are never designed for the submerged condition. But here, these canal, you know, even took the challenges due to submergence. Then in 2017, it was a worse monsoon. All the rainfall occurred over here as if the cloud burst. And you won't believe 34 inches of rainfall occurred in 24 hours in this region. The entire region was inundated. Narmada main canal sustained a damage that required restoration of 700 crores of rupees. Just imagine what would have been the situation of main canal. But these two canals that I have constructed with the geo reinforcement, they remained submerged for 3 days, and water receded after 5 days of time. And still, you know, this canal demanded not even a single rupee of maintenance. So this is the beauty of, you know, the construction of the canal with the geo reinforcement. Now I'm taking you fast to the case number 3. This is actually, you know, a divide wall between a dam and a hydropower in the downstream of the dam. You are all aware of the Tapi Basin because we too are sharing the Tapi Basin. You know, we are the tailenders and you receive the maximum catchment of the Tapi. So this is the photograph of the Tapi and this is the spillover section of the Tapi, what you see on the left photograph. The same spillover section over here is shown here in the magenta form like this. Okay. So this is the spillover section, this is the river gorge. And this small blue line, what you see is the hydropower tail race. Okay. Now, this magenta, what you see is the divide wall between the two. And this red box that I have shown over here is the nosing of the divide wall. As you know, any kind of divide wall or groin, its most vulnerable part is the nosing. So this nosing got very badly damaged over a period of time. Because, you know, taking all the time on its chest, the buffeting of the water. This was the damaged portion of the nosing. You can see it is completely destroyed. And you know, when I visited this dam, it was a pitiable situation. Now this was the restoration section that I designed. Here, you know, I was actually chief engineer and not the head of the design office. But you know, because my experience in the geosynthetics was immense by this time, I gave the design instead of the central design organization. So the design proposed by me was this. You know, whatever was the PT in the river bed that was filled up with this kind of plum concrete. Okay, densely arranged rubbles filled up with the concrete. So this restoration was like this. The horizontal portion was, you know, actually the Gabion covering of this plum concrete and a cladding of a thick concrete, reinforced concrete, say it was 1.5 meter thick. Okay. Now this inclined portion, that is the most vulnerable part of the entire nosing. You know, how did we do it? We provided a polymer sheet only to transfer uniform load on the earthen embankment. It was covered with a biaxial grid. Mind well, here is a biaxial grid because the application requires really biaxial forces to be taken by the geosynthetics. So here is the biaxial grid. And above it is the Gabion, and above it is, you know, a 1.5 meter thick concrete block. Sorry, it is only 0.5 meter. This is 1.5, this is 0.5. Why it is so? You know, concrete is a hard material, rigid material. So the buffeting of the water will be transferred to the Gabion, which is semi-rigid. Concrete is rigid, Gabion is semi-rigid. Biaxial grid will be taking all the tension from the Gabion, and that will be transferred to the earthen embankment in the form of uniformly distributed load. through this bottom non-woven geosynthetic material. And that is how gradually the role will be transferred. So, clobbering of the flood water are converted into gradual load or uniformly distributed load upon the earthen embankment, and that is how we have ensured longevity of the entire nosing portion. And this is the ongoing work. It was not even completed, albeit it had reached the safe stage, and we had to release flood in the same monsoon 5 times. You can see here the flood water gushing out. 5 times we had to release the flood water from the spillover section, and the nosing is behaving so well. You can see here. Thank you so much. Just in the conclusion, I would say 2 things. Lessons that I have learned by dealing with the geosynthetic are 2. Number 1, geosynthetic material can provide you idoneous solutions of several challenges related to hydraulic structures. And number 2, this is the fundamental principle of holistic science, which says the whole is more than the sum of all its parts. So when you apply the geosynthetic material, you deal with the soil, you deal with the geosynthetic material, but when you make them an integration of the 2, then it becomes more than the sum of them too. Thank you all. Now I think I should open the session for the question answer.
Thank you, sir, for your nice presentation. So, dear all, if you have any questions, please raise the hand by clicking on the hand icon and we will unmute you. Or ask your question in writing by clicking on the question icon.
I have received actually in the WhatsApp group one question. I'm just reading it out. Does geomembrane reduces pore pressure? I mean due to resistance offered. See, geomembrane basically stops the entry of canal water into the embankment. And that's why it does not reduce the pore pressure, it checks the pore pressure. That is the basic objective of the geomembrane. I think I have understood the question and replied in accordance with. Further questions are welcomed. Yeah, another question.
So,
is there geosynthetic clay liner used in love spillway portion? What is love spillway? I don't know. I think there is typographical error. Is these GCL used in love spillway portion? What is love spillway? Hello.
so sir, some people have raised the hand, so I
Yes,
am unmuting them.
allow them.
So, Avinash Surve, sir, you are unmuted. Please unmute.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kapadia,
Yes,
for
please.
your nice presentation.
Thank you so much, please.
Yeah, I was ex-secretary CAD, State of Maharashtra, and still I'm working with Executive Director as a VIDC Nagpur.
Great.
We met many times in many seminars.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your efforts, and this is virtually a very good presentation. And we have similar types of problems in Vidarbha region also because of the black cotton soil.
True.
We are already taken some solutions from IIT Ahmedabad under the guidance of Mr. Rao regarding the use of the geosynthetic materials in these areas where the deep soils are there, and the canal lining cannot be retained on these type of subgrades basically. So we are thinking of these type of solutions. My team will definitely discuss this with you. I have one small technical question. When the water gets entrapped in the entire cross section, say because of some seepage, And as you rightly mentioned that the load is transferred, as you have shown me the sketch that soil molecules are putting that load on, and vertical compression and upward and downward pressure is same. So if there is a flow of the water through the body of the embankment, whether the behavior of the soil reduces the tension in the geosynthetic layer itself. That is my question.
Got it, and I'm answering to the point. Sir, your question is very valid. When the water enters the embankment, truly speaking, the water has one tendency to flow into the voids of the, okay? Now, when the water travels along the voids of the soil, it reduces the coefficient of friction between the soil particle and the georeinforcement that you have provided. And because the friction has now been reduced, obviously the tension that is transferred or that is required to be transferred to the geosynthetic sheet is also reduced. And because the tension is reduced, the load that is required to be taken up by the geosynthetic material is also reduced, and that is how it dislodges your entire shape of the embankment. So what is required is to allow the pore pressure to be released as soon as it is generated. So that is the first requirement, and that's why we prefer that pore pressure is not allowed to be mounted beyond certain limit in the geo-reinforced earthen sections. And that's why we allow it to be released as soon as possible, as much as possible.
Thank you. Sir, thank you so much. Yeah, I got your point. So we have to provide a very good drainage arrangement parallelly. Yeah.
True, sir. That is the main requirement.
Yeah.
Sir.
Thank you.
Sir, so shall I switch to another question? Actually, I have received in my WhatsApp some more questions. So if you permit me, I shall go one by one.
Sure, sir.
May I take the questions one by one? See, the next question is, can geomembrane be used to stop leakage from masonry dams? Can it be used in upstream phase? Yes, there are so many applications of this type. Geomembrane can be used to check the entry of the water from the upstream of the dam, and especially it is not called the geomembrane, but actually technically it is called geo-reinforcement cum geomembrane, because it has to take a lot of tension on the cracked portion and in the surrounding of the cracked portion, because there will be some kind of deformity in the shape of the dam as well. So it is not purely a membrane, limited to a membrane. It is geomembrane plus reinforcement. And that's why instead of using HDPE, we are using normally PVC for this kind of applications. And that too very thick PVC, maybe 1.25 centimeter thick PVC for this kind of application. So many dams in the world have been restored with this technology. Then I'm switching to the next question. Is there GCL used in Augie spillway portion? No. Augie spillway portion is not actually the right place where we can use the geosynthetic clay layer, because on the Augie spillway, you know that there are some conditions in which there is some kind of negative pressure or the vacuum as well. That is called cavity. So when the cavity takes place, it will uproot the geosynthetic clay liner. It will also disintegrate the geosynthetic clay liner. Geosynthetic clay liner is not a material that has too much of strength. That's why it will be, disrupted so soon, and it will be also disintegrated in no time because of the cavity formation. So Augie spillway is not the right location where you should prefer geosynthetic. There should be different materials for this. They are called the polyolefins, not the geosynthetic clay liners. Thank you so much. I'm switching to the next question. How geomembrane resists burrowing animals, particularly in canals? This problem is significant. See, the burrowing animals have a very specific kind of an idiosyncrasy. I'm using the word idiosyncrasy. What is the tendency of the burrowing animal? They rut a hole into the embankment. where do they rut a hole, or where do they prefer to rut a hole? If the soil is dry, they don't prefer. Why? Because they need little wet and cool place. Extremely cool, but little wet. And that's why, by their smelling sense, they choose a place where there is some kind of leakage. So they sense the leakage because of the wetness and some smell from the soil, and they start digging from the other side of the water. And that is how, you know, they prepare a comfortable abode for them, and they get, you know, regular little seepage so that it will keep wet and it will be cool also. But if you use the geomembrane, obviously your canal embankment will remain completely dry. If you have done the work properly, it will remain completely dry. And when there is no seepage, there will not be any kind of smell of the water, or any kind of wetness, or any kind of smell of the soil that will attract the burrowing material. So automatically they will be discouraged to come and dig a hole and to make a comfortable abode from them. I think I have tried to give you the proper answer. Maybe switch to now next questions. I think in my WhatsApp group, there is one more question that I've received. Is it possible to use geosynthetics to improve the bearing capacity in the soft soil? Obviously, and this is, you know, ancient applications. These kind of applications are very ancient. They are called the basal reinforcements. Suppose you are constructing a foundation for a building, say tall building, 15-story or 20-story building, and you know, you don't have any option of the pile, but you are going for a combined raft foundation. For all the foundation, there is a combined raft, say for example, and your soil is actually not congenial to this kind of load bearing. It is having somewhat, you know, shortfall in the load bearing, and you need some kind of improvement in the behavior of the soil by adding some strength or adding some load bearing capacity. That is called augmentation of the load bearing capacity. So you sprayed a biaxial geogreen, and then you apply a sand layer, and then apply PCC on it, and then rest your combined raft. Then the load that is coming from the raft will be taken to some extent by the biaxial grid in the form of tension, because it has been properly gripped from all the directions, and then the balance load will be transferred to the soil. So technically speaking, we are not increasing the bearing capacity of the soil, rather we are augmenting externally some more bearing capacity to soil, and that is how, you know, we are resolving our issue. I think I have given the answer to your satisfaction. May I switch to another question now? That says, you know, what is the average life of geosynthetic material? See, different materials have different life. If you use the material properly and don't allow it to be exposed to the UV, ultraviolet rays, you know, the limitation of the geosynthetic is one. If it is exposed to the ultraviolet rays, then it becomes weak in no time. If you shroud it properly, cover it properly, and disallow it to be exposed from the ultraviolet rays, then its life can range from 25 years to 70 years. Poor materials will be lasting only for 25 years, and strong materials or qualitative materials will be lasting for 70 years. This is the normal range. Shall we go to the next question?
Sir, few more people have raised their hand, so I am unmuting them.
Could you please pass on the questions?
Sure, sir. So Umesh Patil have raised the hand. I am unmuting him. Umesh Patil, sir, you can speak now.
आता तुमचे तुम्ही 17,000 रुपये दिलेले आहेत सगळं आलं सह्या झाल्या का सगळ्या झालं ना ते इथं रजिस्टर करायचं किंवा टिप्पण ठेवायचं डायरीमध्ये आपल्या ऑफिसमध्ये त्याच्या वेळेस परत देऊन टाकायचं जे राहिले ते तुमच्या बाकीचे सगळे इकडे आपलं एक सिक्वेन्स ठेवला पाहिजे आपण एकमेकांना
नाही साहेबांकडे जमा करून टाकायचं.
हो ना.
Actually, I could not get the question of Patil sir. I could not get the question of Patil sir actually.
नमस्कार.
Could you please somebody communicate properly to me as to what is the question of Patil sir? I shall try my best to answer.
Sir, I am unmuting any other participant. I think he's talking something different. So next I'm unmuting Prakash Misal.
Okay.
Sir, please unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Kapadia, sir, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, please.
I am Mr. Prakash Misal, Superintendent Engineer with Kalwa Irrigation Circle, Thane. I have two specific questions with respect to geosynthetics. First one is, what is the cost economics as far as geosynthetics and normal availability of material of casing and hurting is concerned? This is one question. And second question, that is it possible to reduce the section of canal if we go for geosynthetic? These are two my questions.
Okay. So, I shall give your second question's answer first. Answer is yes. You can reduce the width of the embankment if you use the geo-reinforcement inside, but not in all cases. Some cases, even with the application of geosynthetics, you cannot reduce the width of the embankment because that is the minimum required width of the embankment from other considerations. Like, your embankment has a service road. Service road is required to be minimum 6.5 meter wide because you have to transfer the cranes from the service road to insert this log in the cross regulator or so. Okay. So if this kind of requirement is there, say a service road of 6.5 meter in the top of it, obviously there will be 1.5 to 1 on the two sides. So in that kind of situation, if the other requirements are dominant, you can't reduce the width of the embankment. All otherwise, yes. Answer is flat yes. You can certainly reduce to some extent the width of the embankment, and that is how you can use the you can reduce the quantity of the soil to construct the embankment. That is number two. Now I am switching to question number one. Your question number one, that is related to the cost. Now this is case specific and answer. In all the cases, geosynthetics may not be more economical than the conventional solutions. Suppose you have the IP core material in, say, lead of just 5 kilometers. The IP core is there with you. Suppose your river sand is available within 10 kilometers of reach. So you have the chimney drain material as well. The horizontal drain is also constructed from the same sand. The gravels are also available more economical. Then the cost economics with the application of geosynthetic versus conventional will not be of much advantage to you. Am I audible now? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir, audible now.
Audible. So what I mean to say, in case all the locally available materials suits to your construction of the canal with a conventional way, then there is no point to derive any kind of economic benefit by applying the geosynthetics. Geosynthetics are applied for what? In some cases, they are too much cost economic. They are too much of cost economical in some cases. In some cases, they increase the life of the structure. As I showed you the example in the desert, we constructed the canal of very poor material, say SM. It is highly erodible material. Even in the submerged condition, the canal stood all kinds of challenges because they were having geo-reinforcement inside. So it is question of tolerance of the structure. It is question of longevity of the structure. So that point of view, geosynthetics are more preferred. I think, am I right? I have received some more question on my WhatsApp. There are some canals where slips inside the canal and upheaval of canal bottom. Will this problem be solved by geosynthetic materials? Yes. Actually, the time is not there. Otherwise, I can make an exclusive presentation on this as to how the swelling soil can be tackled with the geosynthetics without any kind of failure of the lining or the embankment. When the soil is too swell, means the swell pressure is beyond 0.75 kg per cm square. Your IS code permits only 0.5 kg per cm square to be used for the canal construction. But in case the swell pressure is too high, say beyond 0.75 kg per cm square, then these kind of problems are duly manifested and encountered even. That bottom will be swelled, the sides will be either, bailing out, or they will be dislodged, or they will be failed under some kind of, slippages. So that can be really sorted out if a proper design is made for the geomembrane, as well as the lining, as well as the stability of the embankment. And if time permits, we shall arrange one more presentation exclusively on the issues of the swelling soil and how the issues related to swelling soil be sorted out with the geosynthetics. But yes, certainly that can be. I'm switching to the next question, which is outer slopes of canals can be made steepened with application of geogrid reinforcements. Yes. Normally, our canals are having 1.5:1 the outer slope. If it's a big canal, we prefer 2:1 the outer slope. If you use the reinforcement on the outer side, you can flatten the outer slope and you can save a lot of material. In my first case, that was the restoration, I did not go for a flattening of the slope because I had to match the profile with the upstream and downstream canal that was already constructed. So I could not go for economizing the material. Otherwise, yes, if you are constructing a canal afresh, you can certainly reduce the outer slope with the application of geosynthetics, surely. And you can save a lot of material as well. Any questions further?
Yes, sir. So now I am unmuting Kishore Gandhare, sir. Sir, please unmute.
Very nice presentation, sir. Just like we uses geosynthetic in road construction just for the flyovers and having very thin walls. Now this is a really new innovative I have heard for the canals. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your feedback. Now I'm unmuting Nandkanti Siva Sai Syam. Sir, please unmute.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. I am Shyam from. I am a student of VNIT Nagpur. Sir, is it economical to use BGM sheets or canal lining or geosynthetics?
Could you please repeat your question?
Sir, when we have went to see the Pench left bank canal, on that canal lining, the engineers have used BGM sheets, bituminous geomembrane sheets, to reduce the seepage losses. Will BGM sheet is economical or these geosynthetics are economical?
See, actually, the material used as geomembrane can be decided based on your application, your size of the canal, the soil of the embankment, and all. In some cases, even LDP is more than enough. Why to spend more?
Okay.
When a poor material is sufficient to address your requirement, why should we go for a costly material? And in some cases, as I told you, the dam application, even your costly geomembrane like HDP is also not sufficient, and you have to go to the PVC kind of a material, which is a luxury. Truly speaking, PVC is a luxury. But in the dam application, you use the HDP, you have to go for PVC. So it depends what kind of application it is, and you can converge to the right choice.
Okay. Sir, and another question is, which soil is more efficient when we use geosynthetics?
No, actually, see, soil is whether efficient or not is not a question. Whether soil is appropriate for the construction of canal is
Yeah.
If the soil is not appropriate for the construction of the canal and still you don't have any other type of the soil, then geosynthetic can make good the shortfalls of the inappropriate kind of a soil. So geosynthetic is a remedy of inappropriate soil. So there is no question of efficiency.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I have got some knowledge about geosynthetics with your presentation. Thank you so much, sir.
You know, learning is always bits by bits.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next I'm unmuting Santosh Pujari, sir. He is the last participant, sir.
Okay.
Santosh Pujari. Sir, please unmute. Santosh Pujari, sir. Please unmute. Santosh Pujari, sir.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for your presentation.
So nice of you, please.
Sir, my question is that as you told that geosynthetic layer can take the tensions where the cracks are formed along the lining. Is there any chances that the geosynthetic clay liner is able to sink or it affect the stability of the canal?
No, actually, see, you know the geosynthetic material, geosynthetic clay liner, I think you are asking of, is it?
Yes, sir.
Geosynthetic clay liner, you know, is a sandwiched material. So the outer layers are actually made up of some kind of, you know, a polypropylene kind of a material with apertures in. And you know, they don't have a tendency to expand or shrink. Only the material that is used as a filler, that is the bentonite clay, that is a tendency to expand while it comes into contact. But anyway, it remains intact within the bound volume pre-prescribed by the two outer sheaths. You know, that is called a sheath, outer sheath of the polypropylene. So it neither swells in total nor does it shrink. It is only the filler material that swells and shrinks.
Yes, sir. Sir, my another question is that geosynthetic members can reduce the width of the canal. Na?
Yes,
is there
if you properly design it.
Yes, sir. By reducing the width of the canal, it may affect the stability also, na, sir?
Yes, so we have to design the canal for overall stability. Overall stability. You know, you can't reduce the section beyond certain limits so that it will become unstable.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Are we done with the question and answer session?
Yes, sir. So we have answered all the questions. So you can conclude the session now.
So, no, it is not, you know, actually, see, I have already concluded that, you know, geosynthetics basically, you know, helping us design the solutions which are very difficult otherwise to be sorted out. Certain challenges are very difficult to be sorted out with the conventional technologies, and therein we normally prefer the geosynthetics to be. And now, you know, the time has come when so many infrastructure projects have consumed our very good quality of earth, that for the irrigation projects, we don't have the right quality earth. And when we don't have the right quality soil, we shall have to find some other way. Instead of allowing too costly kind of an item called lead for transportation of the soil, we can go for geosynthetics, which is more economical. So that is how, you know, we need to perceive the application of geosynthetics in the hydraulic structure. And from the life of the hydraulic structures as well, we should prefer the geosynthetic. That is what I have to drive home at the end. Thank you to all.
Thank you so much, sir, for your nice presentation. And thank you to all the attendees for joining the webinar. So we are now concluding the session, and we are also planning for more sessions in the future. So we will update you accordingly. Thank you so much. Good day.
Thank you so much. Great. So nice of you.